Curtis King is widely known as one of the biggest music production YouTubers on the platform. For many up-and-coming producers like me, we grew up learning music production techniques and even life lessons from this incredibly thoughtful content creator. In this video, I want to take you behind the scenes into the magic of Curtis King and what I think has made his music and content so impactful. If you don't know me already, this is Andrew the Avatar and you're watching The Magic of Production. So how did Curtis King become Curtis King? Well, before he was Curtis King, he was DeJuan Howard. In his book, The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer, Curtis King says, "I wasn't supposed to have become a music producer. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for my best friend Keaton making that decision for me, I would probably have a much different story to tell." Young DeJuan Howard maybe didn't fit the stereotypical image of a music producer. He was a high school student with a deep voice who loved playing video games and reading X-Men comic books. The idea of being a music producer hadn't even initially crossed DeJuan's mind until one day when his friend Keaton dared him to write a rap verse in less than 30 minutes. Over the coming months, Keaton and DeJuan would continue to write raps for fun. Eventually, it became clear that if anybody was going to listen to their music, they would need beats. This is a law of the universe like gravity and yellow snow tasting like lemonade. Rappers need beats. While DeJuan and Keaton started by just recording to any beats they could find online, they knew they needed their own beats. Finally, the opportunity came in the most unexpected form. While producers today love to fight over FL Studio versus Ableton versus Logic Pro, the Curtis King started in the greatest digital audio workstation of them all, the MTV Music Generator video game for PlayStation. At first, he didn't know any music theory and the beats were amateurish, but he kept at it and eventually the music would begin to take shape. After finishing high school and a year at the local community college, DeJuan was working full-time at a sandwich shop. All the while, he kept pursuing his music dreams despite family pressure, condensation from coworkers, and the economic struggles that come with being a budding musician. At his mother's suggestion, DeJuan began taking classes at the more relaxed and enjoyable Orange Coast College. Every day, he would drive an hour from his restaurant job to take mostly business-oriented courses that DeJuan knew would help him grow his career. As DeJuan continued to develop his chops as a beatmaker, he ended up forming a duo with his friend John, who he had gone to middle school with. John was a dope producer who was big on using live instrumentation in his beats. Eventually, the duo they formed became Curtis King, named after the Curtis Middle School they had both attended and the King Drew High School that John attended. The name stuck, and now Curtis King has become the legendary YouTuber we all know and love today. Back when young Curtis King was still learning the ropes, FL Studio was still called Fruity Loops. What has now become the industry standard among rap producers was once seen as a joke. Curtis King was skeptical at first of a DAW named after a cereal, but when he saw his friend Vic, doing some insane sample chops, all bets were off. Curtis King began to learn how to make beats with Fruity Loops despite the negative stigma. The ability to use the full power of modern computing to directly edit beats opens up a whole world of possibility, and he was an early adopter. As Curtis King continued to develop his sound, he began working with a number of local artists. One of these artists was Ab-Soul. And working with Ab-Soul, Curtis also got a placement with Kendrick Lamar. In The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer, Curtis King says, "When I received my first placement with Kendrick Lamar and Ab-Soul back in the mid-2000s, you know how I celebrated it? By clocking in at work and having an argument with a difficult customer about whether or not he ordered tomatoes on his chicken sandwich." Honestly, I think it's really encouraging to hear how Curtis King went from even a big placement like that to building his own business. The fact is that any professional producer has to build their own table to some level, and it is helpful to hear Curtis King share his story about how even after a big placement like that and the disappointment of the sometimes harsh economics of music, there was still so much further that he was able to go. Interesting too is that Curtis King shares in The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer that it was more important to learn the ropes of the industry and trust intuition more than chasing a paycheck. Even when Ab-Soul's album hit #1 on iTunes, Curtis King was just grateful for the opportunity to have worked on the album and didn't stress payment. He says, "When I look at the life and career I have today, I realize the experience with TDE was way more important to me than a check would have been." In 2009, Curtis King and his mother moved from Carson to the Inland Empire. Moving to a new area made it so that Curtis King had to get out of his shell and network within the local music scene. To help get his name out in the community faster, Curtis King began making free beats for some of the best artists coming up in the Inland Empire. While this did help Curtis King to get some sales and notoriety, it unfortunately led to a situation where artists would expect him to work for free by default. So to help build up more buzz, he began joining beat battles. A major break came for Curtis King when he was invited to compete in the Red Bull Big Tune Beat Battle. While this put Curtis King on the radar and even got him some major placements, the struggle was real. In The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer, Curtis King describes what he calls his lowest of lows when he moved to San Bernardino. I highly recommend any producer looking for some inspiration from someone who has been through it pick up The Prosperous Hip Hop Producer. I promise you will find inspiration and understanding for the real struggles that producers face that can sometimes be difficult for others to understand. Eventually, Curtis King was introduced to the world of beat leasing and building his own income streams by the producer Epic. With the help of another producer, Awesome, Curtis King was finally able to gain financial stability in his business as a music producer. Seriously, the way that Curtis King came up was almost an overnight success, but that overnight transformation was preceded by sleepless nights and many years of developing his craft. But I don't want to spoil the book by telling you how he did it, so go ahead and read how it happened for yourself. Since that point of transformation, the business has continued to grow year after year. Still, I think the most inspiring thing about Curtis King's story is how he's inspired a generation of producers through YouTube. I'm not saying this just because I'm a YouTuber. For a long time, I was chasing placements just like Curtis King and seeing how producers like him, Chew, BusyWorks Beats, Larry O, Cody, and many other creators I've been inspired by showed me a path forward beyond waiting on chance. I know this isn't just my story. Pretty much every producer who has come up in the past 5 years has been inspired by the work of Curtis King. The magic of Curtis King is a different sort of magic from what defines many of the other producers in this docuseries. The capacity for sharing his experience and wisdom with the world gives Curtis King a unique place in the music industry. Also, the willingness to be different from the mold of what a producer is quote-unquote supposed to be is inspiring for many who love the music but maybe don't know yet quite where they fit in. Honestly, Curtis King reminds me a lot of Kanye West in some ways. Having a different vibe and being totally willing to be himself is hugely inspiring for kids like me who for whatever reason love making beats. Seriously, the Curtis King sound has influenced I think almost every producer in the game right now. So many of us came up learning how to make beats by watching Curtis King make beats. The sound and voice that has inspired the sounds of hundreds of thousands of producers. That is the magic of Curtis King. Thank you so much for watching my mini doc series, The Magic of Producing. It would really mean the world if you could like this video to help the YouTube algorithm spread this video out to more producers who could use some inspiration. Also, please consider subscribing and ringing the notification bell so that way you can get more magic. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time.